Welcome to the Hopenning, the place where hope is happening, with your hosts Fran Cadrone and Marina Theron-Monnery. For more information about Fran and Marina, or to apply to be a guest on the show, please go to our website www.hopenning.com. The Hopenning is for informal purposes only and is based on the research of your hosts, Fran and Marina. They, as well as their guests, are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from this podcast, which is not intended to replace any professional medical advice or care by medical professionals you are currently utilizing. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Hopenning, the place where hope is happening. And this is episode 115. Hard to believe, hey, Fran? And I'm here again with my co-host, Fran. And we are joined today by a very, very, very special guest. We're honored and privileged to introduce Faith C. Echo today. She is the author of this amazing book, Rising from Ashes, one of the most captivating books I've read in a long time. Faith is a trauma-informed recovery coach and licensed certified social worker. That's right. Specializes in post-narcissistic stress disorder. She advocates for educating victims, law enforcement, judicial systems, mental health professionals, and society in general about narcissistic abuse and the path to recovery. Welcome, Faith. Wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me here.
That's
So,
great.
Faith, as I was just saying a little bit earlier, I watched your Hopefully episode with Marina, and I was driving, and there were times in that episode that my heart stopped because I've experienced some of those things in my life as well, and I think it's not as uncommon as we might think in the world. And we don't go from 0 to 100 in a narcissistic relationship. It just, why? What happened? What is your journey, and how did you get into a relationship that was so abusive?
Obviously, at first, I had no idea what was happening. I thought I had met the man of my dreams. He put me on a pedestal, and we just had so much chemistry and respect. And probably within a year, things started to shift. It happened very slowly, and the mask came off, because that's what narcissists do. They wear the mask, and they can't keep up with it, because as soon as you disagree with them or want to do something for yourself that doesn't involve them, they just become these horrible monsters and do coercive control, which is mental, emotional, psychological abuse, which is abuse. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that it's only physical. And to your point, I think it's more common than people realize. The term narcissist is thrown around so casually, which drives me nuts, because I think a lot of people don't truly realize how deep it goes and how insidious it truly is, and how much it affects us and our self-worth, and it just changes who we are.
And so in this book, I have a bookshelf full of books in psychology, self-help, and quite a lot of them is about narcissism and different kinds of narcissism. But this book is just such an intimate glimpse into the life of somebody living in a very narcissistic, even life-threatening situation. And that boiling of the frog, where you enter in love into this relationship, and gradually, before you know it, you are completely in the deep end and in this situation. So, Faith, why don't, for our viewers' sake, number one, anybody who has ever been or suspect that they or anybody else close to them is in a narcissistic relationship, please read this book. please, please read this book. It's relatable. I could not put it down. Rising from Ashes by Faith C. Echo. It is on Faith's website, and it is on, I got mine on Amazon. It was delivered the next day. So please, please, very important book to read. So Faith, over to you. Tell us a little bit of a synopsis of your history. The person in the book that you talk about, Damien, the relationship and how eventually it you escaped.
So we moved in together. We had a child together. And again, the first year, he was just somebody, he was so charismatic and so loving and wanted to know all about me and what I desired. And he put my needs first. And then, like the frog in boiling water, little by little, he started to become extremely controlling. He did not like me going out with my friends or even something as trivial as getting my nails done or taking a bath because it took away from him. He became the authority on everything. And if I ever disagreed, he would either go into a flying rage or the silent treatment, which was devastating for me. And again, that's one of the go-to tactics of narcissists. He began gaslighting me. So if I put like my phone in one room and I'd come back and the phone was missing, and I'd ask him if he had seen it and he'd say, no, I haven't. And I'd look throughout the house and then I'd come back and my phone would be there and he would convince me that I was going crazy, that the phone was always there. He did not like me hanging out with my first son, who had a difficult, a different biological father. And slowly by slowly, he started to threaten me. He would take off the starter to my car so that if I had to leave somewhere, I couldn't go. He was tracking me via GPS. He was reading my texts, my emails. He just knew where I was at all times. If I did leave the house, I had to be in constant contact with him and tell him where I was and what time I was coming home. He'd start to threaten me with weird things. Like once he told me he was going to put eye drops in my drink, and I had no idea what that meant. So I was watching Dateline one night, and sure enough, a lady put eye drops in her husband's drink and it killed him. So it was just getting so much worse. And then one day he actually went to punch me and I ducked in time, so he didn't hit me. And then I think the final straw for me was we had a young son, he was 3, and our son began stuttering and reverted to bedwetting. And he just always kept asking, why are you crying, mama? Why is Dada so mad at you? And so one night, my ex said that he was going to take our son the next morning. And I asked where, he wouldn't tell me. I said, with who? He wouldn't tell me. And that was it. I couldn't sit around anymore and just wait. So I called my friend and I said, please come to my house at 3 a.m. so I could make sure that my ex was asleep. I said, please pull up in the driveway with your headlights off so I know it's you. And that's probably the scaredest I've ever been in my entire life, just sitting there waiting for her to pull up. And when I saw her, I grabbed my son and I just ran. I got into her car and I called my lawyer the next morning. And what a lot of people don't realize is that you can get a restraining order for coercive control, which again is mental, psychological, emotional abuse. And even though it's not physical, you're able to get a restraining order. So that's how I escaped that night.
So you knew this man, Damien, a long time before you actually got into this relationship with him. Can you tell that part of the story too, please?
So he and I met in college and we dated. And again, he just presented as an amazing guy, just charismatic. He cared about me, the love bombing. He would buy me gifts and take me to fancy restaurants. And then all of a sudden he ghosted me. which again is what narcissists do, because once you don't provide them with what they require, which is constant adoration and praise and just putting them above everything. So they go on to find a new supply. So I guess he found somebody else, and then I didn't see him for years. And then we bumped into each other one day and we just picked up right where we started. And he started again with the love bombing. And I thought, this is fate. Like, we met again so many years later and it's meant to be. And I didn't realize the universe had totally different plans for me.
It's incredible to again be listening to this, and it's just the goosebumps of, you know, so many people go through this. If you have to, let's start with something that I think can be instrumental in helping people to recognize that they are in a relationship that is not ideal, and that's gaslighting. Can you explain to our audience what is gaslighting, what it feels like, and what the result is?
Gaslighting makes you question your own sanity. So the term comes from a movie where this husband was trying to make his wife feel like she was going crazy. So he would do things like every night lower the light a little bit more. So she felt like her eyesight was going. And she kept saying, "Is it getting darker in here?" And he'd say, "No, what are you talking about?" And then he would turn on the stove and she kept smelling gas. And she kept saying, "Do you smell gas?" And he kept saying, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." So gaslighting is making people think that something's going on, even though it's not. Like, a narcissist can say something and then you'll say, "No, but you did tell me this." And they'll say, "No, that never happened. I never did that." Or they can like park your car on the side of the street and you will know that you parked it in the driveway, but now it's on the side of the street. So gaslighting is so detrimental because it literally makes us feel like we're going crazy. And the narcissist plays into that by saying, "Yes, you are crazy." So it just totally makes you question your sanity and you feel like you literally are going crazy.
So, Faith, my question is, why would any human do that to somebody else? Like, what is going on in their brain that is so messed up that they get a joy or some kind of a dopamine hit out of messing up somebody that loves them so much?
Mm-hmm. Narcissists just have very, very fragile egos, and they need to always put others down because they're projecting the hatred that they have for themselves. So if they see somebody else happy or succeeding, they need to just knock them down. And gaslighting goes hand in hand with narcissists because they do. They derive pleasure in seeing other people suffer, and they want to feel like they have the upper hand. So if their partners feel like they're going crazy, they can keep them there and make them feel worthless and like nobody would ever want you because you're so crazy. So it's like a fear of abandonment, and it is like a delusional, sick pleasure they get out of seeing other people suffer. It's insane. And I am totally the opposite. I'm an empath and I truly believe that people are good. So for people like us, it's extremely hard to understand why somebody would be so cruel.
In my experience, I think a lot of times narcissists actually would pick an empath. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They go for people they know care a lot about people and give them the benefit of the doubt and are patient and put up with a lot of crap. So absolutely, narcissists prey on empaths.
So,
Yeah,
what
and
made,
also that,
sorry,
sorry, Franny, and on in that same line, an empath always wants to see the positive, always wants to fix everybody, and that's exactly, I think, narcissists targets them because they can get away with it.
Absolutely.
so Faith, what was it in your childhood, do you believe, that created in you a a need for this man who was so caring and so attentive, and just because we all know that there's two sides to every human, right? So he showed you only the most perfect, the best, the wonderful, the showered you with attention and treated you like a queen. But what was it in your childhood that made you so attracted to that? And weren't there red flags? Were there never red flags?
There absolutely were red flags. I chose to ignore them. In life, we always have to listen to our gut because it's always right. And my gut was screaming from the beginning. When I was 9 years old, my parents just got divorced, and I never saw them fight. They never intimated that there were problems in the relationship. So when my father came and told me that he was leaving, I felt this huge sense of abandonment and like a desperation to make him stay. I thought it was my fault because children tend to blame themselves in divorces. And I thought I could fix it. I thought if only I was better, I could have my parents stay together and keep our family intact. And when he still ended up leaving, that really solidified in me, like, I don't want to be abandoned. I need to fix people. I need to make things right. So that sort of stayed with me into my adulthood. And I think this person, my ex, just showed me so much adoration that I thought I can be loved. Love doesn't just disappear for no reason. And so I think I ignored the red flags when I noticed that I started feeling bad about myself, which is kind of ironic because when I first started with him, I felt loved and appreciated. And then very gradually, I learned that no, that wasn't the case. And that, yes, he was going to abandon me.
Oh, that's so interesting that in childhood, that fear of abandonment played such a big role to fall for the charms of somebody like this. So if somebody enters a new relationship and they want to make sure that this is not a narcissistic person, especially if they are over the top charming, what are the warning signs that you can advise them on to look out for to make sure that this person is exactly who they claim to be?
Well, as soon as somebody starts to disrespect you, as soon as they start to call you names, as soon as you start to feel bad about yourself, and as soon as they start to control you and you're not able to do the things you love to do, like pursue your hobbies, and they try to isolate you, these are all red flags. And again, I can't say it enough. Listen to your gut. Listen to your instinct. If you feel something's wrong, then it probably is. And we need to have more respect for ourselves and just be aware. Be aware of who we share our time with, who we allow into our lives. So as soon as you start to feel bad, or you're walking on eggshells, or you're scared of this person getting angry, those are definitely all red flags and you should run.
You have a coach, you're a trauma-informed coach, and you work with post-narcissistic stress disorders or post-narcissistic stress. So when in your office, when women come in, how do you coach them? Like how I just, we've had clients, Marina and I, that have come from certain backgrounds as well. So what do you say to them? How did they get through this? I mean, it's so devastating. And I suppose maybe do you work with men too? Because this is not just men who do this to women. There are women who do this to men as well. So how do you coach them through an experience like this? And yours was, was limited. Your son was only 3 years old. So for a client who may have been in an abusive relationship like this for many years, how do you do it?
I just provide them with a safe space to tell their stories. We need to meet our clients where they're at and not try to go back and like just meet them where they at. We need to validate them a lot because a lot of these people, I say women because that's what I can relate to, but I think like 85% of narcissists are male. But yes, females also are narcissistic. And just give them that safe space to talk and share their experience and just bear witness to their trauma and try to help them through it very slowly. I follow my client's lead, and if they're not ready for certain steps, then we don't go there. It's very helpful to process the trauma by really trying to get into the details of what happened. Again, when they're ready, we try to think about smells, we try to think about sights and what they were feeling, and just to know that they're safe now. And the more you talk about it, the more you become desensitized to it, and you're able to see that the past trauma is no longer a present threat. Again, it's different and difficult if these victims still have to have contact with the narcissist because of children. So I help them navigate how to have moderate contact. I encourage them to use apps to communicate about the children so that they don't get cornered. They don't have to have arguments that will bring them back, re-trigger them. To realize everything just has to be like in a business manner when it comes to the children. These apps are visible by judges and lawyers. They cannot be edited or deleted. So the main focus remains on the children. I recommend doing the drop off and pick up in a public place because at any moment, these victims can just become vulnerable again because that's how much control the narcissists have over their lives. And it takes a long time to heal, but it absolutely is positive and it's possible as well. And I'm living proof that not only can you heal, but you can thrive after narcissistic abuse.
And your book, you refer to Jennifer's Law, and I know that it takes people to 7 attempts in general to leave a relationship like this before they actually do. But I think one of the biggest thing is the fear of what is going to happen with them on the other side, the fear of the abuse that can continue even if they leave, all the threats, like you had a lot of threats against you, that he's going to carry out those threats. So in a very big way, when you sought legal help and you found out about Jennifer's Law, it helped you a lot. So explain to us about Jennifer's Law.
So Jennifer's Law is named after two women, Jennifer Dulos and Jennifer Magnano, who went to the police and they tried to get help and they kept saying, my husband is threatening this, he's saying this, and nobody believed them because they weren't physically in danger. They hadn't been physically abused. So nothing was done. And tragically, both these women ended up being killed by their husbands. So in honor of them, now under the umbrella of the definition of domestic violence includes coercive control, which is mental, emotional, psychological, financial control. And women or men are able to get restraining orders. And I really believe that that law has been saving a lot of lives.
Okay. And so when they get a restraining order, what does that mean, a restraining order?
That means that the abuser cannot go within 100 feet of the victim. They cannot have contact via text or phone calls or social media or anything. Usually it's put in place for a year, and then after the year they can go back and revisit the restraining order. But the scary thing is that, yes, even if there's a restraining order, that's not to say that the abuser isn't going to violate it and come back and hurt the victim. And the most dangerous part in abusive relationships is when the victim finally leaves, because the person no longer has control over their victim. And it's terrifying.
Tell our audience about the night you finally escaped, and the absolute trauma, and that was the part of the book that I was literally starting to bite my nails and almost living it with you. The plan you had to make, and but you had to execute it actually in a hurry because of the threat of taking your son away. So tell our audience about that.
I think I endured a lot with this person's abuse, but as soon as you're threatening to take my son, that's just when the claws came out. Like, I was terrified, but I had so much adrenaline running through my body, and I felt like I wasn't even in my real body. So I had to tell myself this is just a movie. And yes, I had to pretend that I was an actress. I don't know if you've seen the movie Sleeping with the Enemy with Julia Roberts,
Yeah.
but she does something similar. So I just kept pretending that was it. I couldn't stop for a second to like think or overanalyze or anything. I just had to move because I knew that my life depended on it. I'm sure if he saw me trying to escape, my story would have ended differently. So I did. I grabbed my son and my friend picked me up. And I promise you, like, we didn't say anything in that car ride. She only lived like 5 minutes from my house. It seemed like an eternity. And nothing was said because I knew I thought whatever's said in this moment is forever going to haunt me. I felt safe when I got to her house. I was just trembling and I was trying so hard not to wake my son up. He did wake up for a little bit. I'm sure to some degree he will probably remember what happened. And someday I'll have to give him my version of the story and just let him know that I did it for his safety, for my safety. And yeah, it was just terrifying. But if we feel threatened or our children feel threatened, we need to get out of the situation. And it was just dire. And I knew right then and there that it had gotten really, really bad and that it was time to leave.
Yeah. So your son is how old now?
Now he's 6.
Okay. And is there a court order that you have to live within a certain distance of the dad?
Not necessarily. I mean, we're in the same state. I'm sure I wouldn't be allowed to move to a different state, but I have far enough distance from him, but yet it's close enough where my son doesn't have to endure like hours drive because he does have custody every other weekend. So, and we meet at the police station for the exchanges, and I just try to keep it very simple, yes, no answers. And thank God my son is thriving. I was so worried about how he was going to do, but I think mainly he was relieved because he didn't have to put up with the screaming and the yelling and the crying mom. And now he can see me genuinely happy and laughing. And he's thriving. He's thriving.
That's the best outcome there is. And I think sometimes, so many people would stay in a relationship like that for the sake of the children. But in my experience, it's much better to leave. That's not
Absolutely.
a healthy environment for children. And that brings me to another question, Faith. Children of abusive relationships, or of narcissistic relationships, do you ever deal with children who had a narcissistic parent?
I do. I do. and we just need to keep reminding them that they're loved and none of this is their fault. And the sad thing is that I feel like a lot of children are walking on eggshells. So they become accustomed to the narcissistic parent, always expecting more from them, making them feel bad, getting angry for the smallest things. So just again, another warm space to provide love and validation.
I I come from a teaching setting, Faith, and in the interview with Marina, you talked about how women, well, young girls, need to be educated about this. Like it's so important that there is some kind of education in schools about how not, or if you are in this kind of relationship, because girls start dating so young now in junior high, grade 7, 8, 9, they've already got boyfriends. Some of them have also, some are left home and are moved in with their boyfriend's family or whatever, it's an epidemic. And so what can we do as educators or as the public or what? How can we help young, like girls, be more aware to walk of the signs of because they're so young and so naive, and so many of them just want to be loved, right? They just want to be loved by a male figure. And so they don't discriminate at all. Whoever wants to love them, they're happy to be loved. So how do we educate girls?
I think it would be amazing if starting in elementary, middle school, there was some sort of course taught about self-worth and how we are worthy of unconditional love and respect. And I feel like starting at that age, we should educate about what abuse looks like, about what is unacceptable in a relationship. I give many talks at colleges, and of course, the people are 18 to their 20s. And I try to educate them because they're at the beginnings of their life after college and relationships and marriage and all that. But I really feel that this conversation should start at least in middle school about red flags and self-worth again and self-esteem. And I think it's very important. I think children tend to model their relationships with their parents. So if they're in abusive households, they will sort of mimic that. At the same time, though, I grew up in a very loving household. Like I never saw my parents fight. My father treated me like a queen. So a lot of times I question myself, like I didn't grow up witnessing this behavior. So it's tricky, but I really do think at a young age, a course like this should be taught in schools.
The first thought that came to my mind was give them this book to read. I think even at a junior high, middle school age, it would be a very good book for children to read, for young people to read.
Mm.
So it's just fascinating. And you mentioned something earlier about children, and in my personal experience, it was like living on a time bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd never trusted a moment of peace because you never knew when that bomb would drop again, and you never knew what would trigger it. And it's a very difficult situation for a child to grow up in. And there's really I think the worst thing that can happen to that child is for the parent who's being abused to stay in that relationship, because they are being affected as well. And in my personal experience, also, narcissists also always have a scapegoat. So what do you know about that?
Absolutely. My ex had 3 children from a different marriage, and there was definitely the scapegoat child that was always wrong, always at fault. he would take a lot of his anger out on this child, and for no reason. And it was very hard for me to sit back and watch. And if I ever commented or said, hey, maybe let's do this instead, then there was wrath to pay. And it was worse for all of the children to watch. So we all walked on eggshells, trying to remain calm and keep the peace in the house. And a lot of times I let things go to protect this child. And then there was also the golden child who could do no wrong and always got all the presents and all the attention. And again, it was very, very hard to watch.
So,
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Faith.
And yes, a lot of people stay for the children because they don't want to have broken homes, and they need to leave for the children because children have front row seats and are abused by osmosis, and they deserve firm roots for their childhood, especially during the developmental years. So it's extremely hard. It's probably one of the hardest things people will ever have to do, but we need to leave for the children's sake.
Faith, while you were with him, did you ever reach out to anybody else and tell them what was going on, or did you just suffer in silence, like, and keep the secret? Like, what was your experience like?
At first, when I had no idea what was going on, I thought it was me. So I was like ashamed. I didn't reach out to people. Eventually I did reach out to my family, and nobody believed me because in person he was just this great, respected man, and he was just so generous and kind and funny. So nobody believed me. I think it was after they could see in my face and I had lost like 20 pounds and I was just like a shell of who I was, that they finally started to believe me. A few of them actually got to witness him when his mask fell down. So I counted on my friend who came to save me that night. And it was very, very freeing to be able to talk about it, especially when I found out what it was and I could put a label on it and see that it was not me, that this is an actual thing. And then towards the end, my friends and family were extremely, extremely supportive. And I don't think I would be where I am today without their like forming like an army around me.
So I think if anybody's listening or watching this, the importance of understanding that you do have law on your side today, and there are things that you can do, and I think it takes a lot of guts to finally make that plan and finally almost work behind the scenes to come up with a plan in secret for your escape. How would you advise people on that?
Find out where domestic violence shelters are. Reach out to friends that you trust and know, and keep the communications open. If you ever feel like you're in danger, just leave. Try to formulate a plan quietly so that you're able to have an executed plan so that you can get out safely and quietly, and try to have a place to go and just be very, very calm.
I suppose you also need to have your keys, right? A second set of keys and a hidden spot, money like cash in a hidden spot. Like, because if he's really controlling, he's going to be making sure that he always knows where's your cell phone, where are your keys. He's going to have access to the bank accounts. He's going to have access to shut down your credit cards.
Mhm.
So have all of those things in place. So the exit plan is planned. and then, have that opportunity, whether it's in the middle of the night or however, he decides to go somewhere, and you've got this exit plan, you can do it, and it's going to work. And plus your cognitive brain will kick in so that it overrides your, the, like you said, when Julia Roberts in that show, she had her plan in place. It's important to really have the plan in place and know what you're doing. Maybe have that bag packed already for your children, yourself, anything you would need, put somewhere in a secret place.
Mhm.
Because really, narcissists are like that. They will keep track, like you said, they have the GPS tracker on your phone, or they hook something to your car so they know where your car is. I mean, it sounds scary, but it's true. It is true. And with all the apps that are available now, you don't know if he's reading your text messages. You don't know, because it's a world like that where people have access to other people's information. So I applaud you so much for your bravery, the courage, and doing that for your child. Because, like you said, it is so unhealthy for children to be living in an environment where there's a constant on edge, especially if the mom is constantly on edge. Nobody knows what's happening next. Nobody's going to know, because everybody's feelings, emotions are hinged on how the narcissist feels. If he's in a good mood, we can be happy. If he's not in a good mood, we're so wanting him to be in a good mood. We'll do everything we can to make him happy so that he can be in a happy mood, so that we can be in a happy mood. And it's so codependent. It's such a codependent relationship. So I applaud your bravery and what you did for yourself and your child. Like, congratulations, and all the wonderful things you've been doing since to help victims. So what are you, you're on a roll, Faith. So what are your plans for the future? What else are you going to do? Are you going to write another book or start another clinic somewhere? Or...
I would love to write another book. I'm working on a workbook to go along with Rising from Ashes, so that people who read it can have skill sets and implement, stuff that I try to teach people to help get through the situation, and kind of like journaling. And I just want to continue to spread the word about narcissism, about its abuse, about self-worth, and just truly help people out of these abusive relationships and guide them towards freedom and happiness, and showing people you can survive and you can thrive and you can live your authentic self and live the beautiful life that you're meant to live, because that's our birth given, right?
So inside of you must be a very strong person. And I know that in these kind of abusive relationships, the abuser would a lot of times have these, most of the times, more than physical, have the verbal assaults, telling you that you're stupid, that you cannot leave, you will never be anything without me, you'll not survive without me, those kinds of things. Um, Besides it seeing as a huge red flag, um, before it escalates, I would advise any person in a relationship like that to get out as soon as possible the first time it happens, because when you start to ignore it, you start to believe it as well, and it's like this radio that starts to play in your head. And from my personal experience, as well as from what you have gone through, at some point you have to find that inner strength within you. How did you find that strength? Where did you tap that, and how can you help people? Because I know also from my studies that something in the brain, in your hippocampus, starts to change when you hear those messages about yourself all the time. But to escape, you need to start to believe something different. You need to start to believe that there is something for you. How did you manage that?
I started to realize that I was so mentally hijacked that I couldn't show up for my sons, I started to realize that I was completely isolated and I was no longer in touch with my friends or my family. And I started to realize that, yes, something does change in the brain where you're always on edge and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I think what really, really, really helped me was starting to research narcissism. I just got as educated as I could on it, and I read all the diagnosis criteria, and then I started to read other people's stories, and I finally realized that I was not alone, that it was not me, that there is a label to this, and that there was a way out. So I think education about this really, really helped me realize and finally helped me see the light. And then I promise you the last straw was when he threatened to take my son. That was like, bam, that was it.
Yeah, amazing.
So we're all about hope here on Hopenning. So what are your last words of hope for our viewers, our listeners, anyone who's watching that may suspect that the person that they're with may be a narcissist? What are your words of hope?
Do not ever compromise yourself. Do not ever change for anybody. Do not let anybody put you down. We're worthy of love and respect unconditionally. And you can do this. There is a way out. Keep the faith, be hopeful, and just keep going. Like Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, just keep going.
Beautiful. Faith, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for writing this book. It could not have been easy. Thank you for being an example to so many women today. I really appreciate you being here and applaud you for your strength and your example.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, thank you, friends.
Oh, thank you, Marina. And if you were touched by this episode today, please buy Faith's book. I think it's going to be a life changer for those of us that have understood what this is about. I'm getting tingles in my legs, so I know that it's important that I say this out loud. It's a good book, and it's from the heart, and Faith is so vulnerable in it. And we all deserve better. We deserve the best. So if you enjoyed our show today, please subscribe, and we will see you here on Hopenning next time. Thank you, Faith. Thank you, Marina. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.